to self. Fire Natasha after service. Well, it's great to be back. And we were away on vacation. I think if you hear someone talking, there's some translating happening into French, so bear with me. It's great to be back. It's always great to go away on vacation. But it's always a real pleasure to be back. So just make sure the board starts here and finishes over here. So if you have a short attention span and it gets to you in the middle, don't be like, oh, squirrel, and then just put it down, okay? Make sure you pass them all the way over, and that'd be really great. But it's really great to be back, and I really do. And when I'm away, I miss you all. It's always strange for me to be away, and I just speak for myself, but I know that I need to go away because I need to rest and all of those things. But it's strange because part of me is, my body is away, but my heart is still here. And it's quite an out-of-body experience for me, actually. It is. I don't really enjoy Sundays away because a big part of me is here. You know, wondering who's here, who's not here. Is everything okay? Is all these different things. The truth is, I've never lived anywhere as long as I've lived here, ever in my life. I've never lived in a house as long as I've lived in the house that I've lived in right now. Ever in my life, okay? My parents are actually away this week speaking at a church, but we've never lived anywhere. And so for me, it's this weird experience for me when I'm away. And every so often a church will call and say, hey, would you like to become our pastor? And I always say, no, they're stuck with me. Yeah, so don't worry. And if you would like me to leave, just be quiet. But I really do love each of you. Honest, this is the truth. There's not a single person in this room that I know. Maybe you're new today and I haven't met you. That really, there's not a single person that for whatever reason, when I think of you, I don't have a fond thought about you. Every single person. And if you're new today, just give it a little while. And I'll come up with something fond about you too. Nothing puts your relationship through a test like family vacation. It's weird. You're like, we're going to go and we're going to spend time together. As soon as we started vacation, I got sick. You know, man sick, you know. And later on, Alex got strep throat. Alex walked out of university straight onto vacation, straight from freedom to captivity. Penny and I, we worked till midnight. The day before we left, we were still here at midnight, just trying to make sure that, you know, everything went proper, made sure the giving letters were ready and out and ready, and we still messed those up. The truth is, Noah was with us, but he would rather just stay home. We were traveling with Penny's parents, my in-laws. I was going to leave that there. But they actually think I'm funny for about the first 3 or 4 days. They're like, oh, Troy's funny. And then the last 3 or 4 days are like, I'm pretty sure, I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure they're like, I hate you. I can't prove it for sure, but it's, you know, they think I'm annoying. Spending time with the same people for 10 days can be a little bit challenging, and we can have times where we can get in conflict. I had to sit back the whole time I was gone, or the part that we had a vehicle, I had to sit back and let somebody else drive. That was really hard for me. Not only was I a much better driver than them. We'll edit that out of the tape. When you're with people all the time, you got to put aside what you want to do and do what others want to do. Because everyone who I was with, they wanted to go shopping every day. I mean, how many times can you go to Target? Like, it's just like a red Walmart. And I have a Walmart right there. And when you travel with Penny's family, everything is a group activity. Everything. All right, we're going shopping. Everyone. Oh, we need gas, or we need to get bread. Everyone pile in the van. Like everything's a group activity. This trip was much better that way. But I think I see much less family trips in store. Not because of my in-laws, but because my kids are getting older, and then it'll be me and Penny, and we can usually get along for 10 days. Notice I said usually. But you know what? Managing relationships is hard. And it's hard for all of us. And we started a series a few weeks ago, and the series is going to be interrupted a couple times, because next week we have the mental health thing, and I was away. But we are going to just do a quick review of week 1. And we talked about we talked about marriage. We're getting ready for marriage. And we talked about how God needs to be our number 1, and our spouse to be our number 2. We talked about 4 vows that we need to make as people when we're in a relationship or getting ready for a relationship. Number 1 vow is this: I promise God will be my first priority, and you will be my second priority. God needs to be first in every relationship that we have. And then our spouse, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, have you will, they will be our second. But the truth is, the closer we grow to God, the closer we grow to each other. And I realized I wanted to say something. I want to understand that there's a large mixture of relationships in this room, and there's people in this room that you're a Christian and your spouse isn't a Christian. And I realize that causes a whole bunch of different feelings and emotions. And it's easy to say, well, if I get closer to God, then they'll get closer to God. And I realize that it's complicated, but I would just encourage you to just put God first. Vow number 2, I promise to always pursue you as my number 2. That men and women both, but men more likely, they stop pursuing something once they have that something. And we pursue something that we don't have. And I would really encourage each other, our spouses, or in a relationship, to continue to pursue each other. To pursue God first, but to pursue each other second. We talked about non-sexual touch and how it's important because men can pervert anything. Now, some women can pervert anything as well, but men can pervert anything. They'll be like, "I'll load your dishwasher." You know, like men are men. But we need to be people who pursue not just sexual touch. If you're not married here today, do not date someone who takes you for granted. You believe that you can fix them, but you cannot fix them. If they don't make you a priority today, they will not make you a priority in 5 years. We are always an exaggerated version of ourselves. We talk about closing the gap between intentions and actions. We talked about how our actions are different, our intentions are different than our actions. And we just had 3 things that we laid out that said these things will be helpful in our relationship. Number 1, when you think of something good, say it. When you think something good about your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, a friend, say it. When you think it, say it. I love you because. It's easy just to say, I love you. I love you. It becomes, but if you put, I love you because, and at the end, you think of, I love you because of this. There's some way more meaning behind it. But when you think of something good, say it. Don't hold back the words that everybody needs. Number 2, when you think something special, do it. When you think about doing something special, do it. How many people, I'll raise my hand, but how many people have had the opportunity, you thought, I should do this, I should pick up this, I should buy this, I should get these flowers or write this card, and didn't do it? We've all done it. When you think of something special, do it. It's an old saying, an old song that says, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We need to close the gap between our intentions and our actions. And number 3, when you want something different, be different. You can either try one of 2 tactics. You can either try to nag somebody, and I don't mean nag as in either the guy or the girl nagging someone into changing, or you can actually say, okay, I'm going to be the change in this relationship. Example would be if one of the spouses is always on their phone We can either nag to each other, or you can put your phone away and stay engaged and pray and believe that the spouse will follow. When you want something different, be something different. One thing we talked about, and everybody kind of laughed, is what drew you to that person will probably end up being something that annoys you about that person. What drew you to them, the opposites attract. What draws you to each other later on will annoy you about them. So we have a guy who's kind of quiet and dark and mysterious, like Joel. And and Bianca's drawn to him because he's mysterious, and that attracts you to him. But then later, when he's sitting on the couch for 9 hours and he hasn't said one single word and he's mysterious, it's annoying. But here's the thing, God wants to use our different attributes, our opposite of each other, to make us strong. The devil wants to use them to divide us. Marriage isn't about dividing everything in half, it's about giving everything you've got. We talked about marriage being a covenant, not a contract. A contract is based out of distrust. You write a contract, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, and if you don't do this, I get this. That's a contract. A covenant is the sharing of blood, that we are in this together. Vow number 4 was this: I promise to confide in you, not hide from you. Secrecy is the enemy of intimacy. If you have to delete it off your phone, or delete the chat, or delete the app, you are being deceptive. And that will destroy the intimacy you have with the person. One thing that we talked about that I found interesting, and lots of people mention it to me later, is that we've moved the line of sin. And we say, well, I didn't commit adultery, meaning I didn't do the physical act of sex with someone I'm not married to. And we've moved the line that that's the line. But the truth is, the Bible tells us if you look at someone sinfully in your heart, that you've already committed adultery. But we'll step over that line, over the inappropriate texting line, over the inappropriate conversation line. And we'll say, oh, well, at least I didn't, but we've moved the line. And we've done that with lots of things. We're going to talk about that again today. But we can't move the line. The Bible is clear that if we look lustfully, we've already committed adultery. So today we're going to talk about something that we can all apply to every relationship in our life. It's something, a topic that we often think of as bad, but can actually be very good and can be really helpful for a relationship if it's done well. In my line of work, there's always going to be some sort of conflict. I don't enjoy conflict, and it's not every day, but conflict does happen. It's not something I enjoy, but it happens, and I've seen it happen in many different ways. I've been in ministry for over 20 years. Over half of those have been here. I've had the following conflicts in my 20 years of ministry, in no particular order and no order of importance. I had to tell a wife and her children that the father of her children was cheating on her. I had a group of people who hated my singing so much that when I lead worship, they would stay out in the lobby until I was done. And then when I was done, 8 or 12 of them would come in a line. And they would sit down. I've had countless people comment about my weight, from everything to you look like you gained a few pounds, to how can you be a Christian or a pastor and be fat. I've had people tell me that I had favorites and that I just used people. I've had people tell me that disliked my preaching and listed all the reasons why. I had people come to me and say, I disagree with your sermon and this is why, and sent me links and documents to show me how much I was in error. I've had people comment on my clothes, my hair, my wife, my kids. I've had countless people mad at me and leave churches I was pastoring and refuse to tell me why. And they said, no, everything's fine, except for they deleted me off Facebook and never talked to me ever again. But you know what? There's been times, that's just one side. There's been times that I've said things that I've been wrong. There have been times where I've done things that were wrong, that caused conflict. That even in times when people came to me, even if there was just a little bit of truth, there was something that I could learn. There's been times where I've made jokes that have hurt people's feelings. When you talk as much as me, there's only an amount of time before you're going to make somebody angry. But most times I had no idea. I've made the wrong decisions. I've had to tell people I can't dedicate their children or baptize them as adults. There's times I've made the right call, there's times I've made the wrong call. There's been times that I've been 100% wrong. And I've had to say sorry and make it right. I've been wrong about how I've responded to something, even if I felt I was right. You can still do the right thing at the wrong time and be wrong. You can do the right thing in the wrong way and still be wrong, even if you're right. I've had many conflicts in my life in many different settings. There's only a few of those that I honestly, these are just a few that I know about. I'm confident that there's literally hundreds of other conflicts that I have no idea about. Conflict happens in many settings. It happens with a husband and a wife and a husband, parents and kids and parents, and boss and employee, from employee to boss, within friendships, dating relationships. Even strangers have conflicts. Now we have a whole new world of conflicts online. If you don't think just go online and write your opinion. And there's a million people that have a different opinion than you, and they're ready to ram it down your throat as the moment you post it. We have more conflict today because we do a lot of communication through texting, and then we have things that are misunderstood that were never meant because there was a missed period or a missed punctuation, and people are like, I can't believe. You know that there's actually probably about 15 different ways that you can reply okay to somebody's text, and they all mean different things. If you put a period at the end, you're angry. In my opinion, the vast majority of conflicts are unintentional misunderstanding, and one party doesn't even know that they hurt the other party. It's not always the case, but the vast majority. I bet that there's 25 to 50 people in this room that I've been frustrated with you over the last 11 years. Not for the whole 11 years. And you don't even know it. Most of those times are things that I just had to work through because the relationship was worth more than the conflict. The truth is, there's probably 100 of you in this room that you've been frustrated with me. And that's okay. Because conflict is not always a bad thing. The Bible gives us many examples of how to deal with conflict. We're going to look through it today. I gave everybody a blank piece of paper. And I had these big, grandiose dreams that I was going to have a handout for you when I got back. And time just really got away from me, and we got back. But what I would really like you to do today is to try to write down as much as you can. Just because I know that we all have conflict in our life. And if there's anything that I could say today that could help you, and I know it's helping me for sure. The Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered, there will be conflict. No, it doesn't say that. It says where 2 or 3 are gathered, there am I in the midst. In Matthew 18, there's an interesting passage of scripture that we're going to look at a lot today. And it tells us how to deal with conflict. And it says this, that where 2 or 3 are gathered, there am I in the midst. And often we'll use that passage out of context because we don't realize it's about conflict. If there's only 2 or 3 people at a prayer meeting, they'll say, that's okay, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered. And that's okay, except for the passage is about conflict. And what it's saying is, where there's 2 or 3 gathered to make things right, God is there. We have everything we need. Doesn't that change things in your mind? That even if you're having conflict with your spouse, where 2 are gathered, if God is there, everything we need is there. What is conflict? I would define conflict as this: a difference in opinion or purpose that frustrates someone's goals or desires. And that takes on all different shapes and sizes. But that's where it begins. That two people have a different goal or a different idea, and they have conflict about who's going to drive, or who's going to do this, or who's going to do that, or where we're going to eat, or where we're not going to eat, or where we're going to do this, or you said this and you meant that. It's this difference of opinion. And there's 5 styles of conflict management. Here they are. The aggressive style. And that aggressive style, we all know people like that. They're just like, whoever can be the loudest and the most, say the most words, they're going to win the argument. Even if they didn't really win the argument, they're going to act like they win the argument. There's actually a time and a place for the aggressive style. For example, if Bell, I was going to say Rogers, but that would never happen, but if Bell makes a mistake on my bill, and I call them up and I need my $50 back, I have to be nice and kind, but it's really what it's about is I want to win this. I'm going to win, Bell's going to lose. And that's okay, as long as I'm kind, as long as I'm nice, but it's usually this aggressive style. Someone steals your parking spot or whatever. And then there's the aggressive style, then there's the avoiding. And this is most people. They'll avoid conflict at all costs. They'll just shove it under the rug over and over and over. They'll avoid it. And then there's the accommodator. And that person will just be like, they'll just say, yeah, I'm going to do it, I'll do it, no problem, no problem, no. They'll just accommodate, and they always lose. The aggressive person always wins. The avoider, nobody wins. And the accommodator, they lose all the time. And then there's compromise, where I win, or I lose, I win, you win, you lose, I lose. Everybody wins, everybody loses, because you come with compromise. Okay, I'll give this, I'll give that, I'll do this, I'll do that. The last one and the best one is collaborative, meaning that you talk it out, that you actually make peace. The Bible talks about that. We're going to talk about it later. There's 4 G's of conflict. So this is what I'd like you to do in your sheet if you would like to. You don't have to. The first G is to glorify God. The first thing that we should be doing when we're in conflict, the number 1 G is this. We should be seeking to glorify God in the conflict. Above everything else, above winning, above getting our way, above everything. How can I glorify God in this conflict? And when you get into conflict, ask yourself the question, how can I please and honor God in this situation? 1 Corinthians 10:31 says this, whatever you do it for the glory of God. So, glorify God. So I'm going to do 4 G's, and spread out within those 4 G's, we're going to do 10 points. And here they are. Point number 1. We need to understand conflict and our response. What causes conflict? We need to understand that. A lot of times it's misunderstandings, differences of opinion or values or goals. Some people are competitive and you get competitive and it causes it. But most time conflict is caused over sinful attitudes and desires. If we're really, really honest, if we really want to understand conflict, yeah, sometimes we're competitive, sometimes there's a difference of values and opinions, yes, but often we take it, and it's a misunderstanding, but we have conflict because we have sinful attitudes and desires. It's really important to stay on top of conflict. There's actually a scale that they've put out. It's called the slippery slope of conflict. And if you can manage conflict in the middle, you can negotiate, mediate, you can get along. But if you let it go too far into the attack mode, the actual end of the conflict scale is murder. Think about that. And if you go the other way, if you hide from it, the actual end of the scale they use is suicide. But if you stay on top of conflict, it can actually be good. But if you don't, it can end up in actually murder, suicide. Those are the two extremes. The second thing under glorify God is conflict provides opportunity. Provides opportunity to glorify God. And the truth is, it provides opportunity to serve others and to grow to be more like Jesus. The people that I have the most conflict with, my family, are the people that I'm actually closest to. Why? Because we work through the conflict. And when you work through conflict with somebody, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, it actually can strengthen and make your relationship better. Number 3, peacemaking is not optional. Jesus prayed this high priestly prayer in John 17. May they be brought to complete unity to let the world know that you sent me and have loved them even when they have loved me. Peacemaking is not optional. We can sit here and we can be upset with somebody, our spouse, our kids. I remember when I was in Bible college, I don't have a lot of time, but when I was in Bible college, I had a professor. You're going to probably find this very hard to believe, but I wasn't exactly scholarly. I wasn't good at the school. And when I was in Bible college, I had a professor that I did not like. And because I did not like him, he did not like me. I will be honest, I probably started it. I did not like him, he did not like me. And in our first year, we had this class, Christian Heritage, and so at the end of the year, I got my report card and I failed this class. And I was ticked. I mean, I knew I didn't do very well, but I was like, this is ridiculous. So I went to the teacher to talk to him. I said, listen, I'd like to see the breakdown of my marks. He wouldn't show them to me. He said, no, I'm not showing you. I said, okay. So I went to the academic dean. I sat down. I said, listen, I told him the story. I said, listen, I'd like to know the breakdown. He said, well, go to the teacher. He'll tell you. And I said, no, he won't. I asked him. He's like, oh, that's strange. He's like, all right, I'll find them for you. And I said, listen, to the academic dean, I said, listen, I know that I've been difficult, and I know that I haven't been the best student. And I want you to know that if I failed, I failed. I'm not going to appeal it. I'm not going to fight. If I failed, I failed. He's like, well, okay. So 2 weeks later, he calls me into the office. He said, okay, Troy, the academic dean, he says, here's your marks. So he starts down through the marks, 17, blah, 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 blah. And then one of the marks was like 20 and a half. And he gets down to the bottom and he says, okay, you got a 49. And your pass was 50. I said, okay, I failed. And so before I stood up, I said to the dean, I said, what happened to the 0.5 and the 20.5? And he said, well, you actually got 49.5, but he rounded it down instead of rounding it up. And I said, that's why he teaches at Bible college, because he couldn't teach math. Like I said, I wasn't that nice. I said, because everyone in the world knows you round up from 49.5. And he looked at me and he said, if you fight this, you'll win. And I said, listen, and I don't know why I said this, honestly, because I wasn't being a model citizen by any stretch. But I was like, you know what, I gave my word. I won't. The next year, my whole entire class had Fridays off, except for me. I had this class at 8 a.m. on Friday mornings. My very first class, I went into class, and you think, I'm going to be nice about that. No, I went right in and I sat right at the front, in the middle, right in front of his desk. And I'm like, if I'm going to be miserable, you're going to be miserable. And I sat there, and I never missed one class, 1 minute. I never went to the bathroom. I just sat there looking at him. And I remember when we got out, it was time we write the exam, and I was in the exam, and I knew I wasn't doing well in the exam. It was a really hard course. And I was just tormented. really by myself, by how I treated him, what I did, how I contributed to this. And I remember I flipped over a piece of paper in my exam and I sat there and I wrote him a letter saying how sorry I was for how I treated him. That I actually talked behind his back and actually was very hateful to him. And I remember I stood up and I walked all the way to the back, and he was at the back collecting exams. And he said, "Oh, are you done?" I said, "No." And I handed him the piece of paper. And I walked all the way back to the front. Peacemaking is not an option. We can be stubborn, but the truth is that we all contribute to conflict, but making peace is not an option. The second G is this. The Bible tells us to get the log out of our own eye. Second G is get the log out of your own eye. The question we need to ask ourselves is, how has I contributed to this conflict? And what do I need to do to resolve it? See, that's what I was at. What did I do to contribute to this? And I flipped over the paper and I wrote everything that I could think of. What did I do, and how can I resolve this? You can look up the passage in Matthew 7:5. Point number 4, is it really worth fighting over? There's two kinds of logs to remove in our eyes, but sometimes some things just aren't worth fighting over. And sometimes when I get frustrated, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to talk to Junior about this. And then when I think about it and pray about it, I think, you know what, this isn't worth it. I'm going to let this go. But I really got to let it go. But there's two kinds of logs that we need to remove out of our eye. A critical negative attitude and actual sinful words and actions. Is this really fighting over? But I need to deal with the sin in my own heart first. In Philippians, there's an attitude check that we could do. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Let your gentleness be evident. Replace anxiety with prayer. See things as they really are and practice what you've learned." Rejoice, gentleness, prayer, reality, practice. Number 5, examine yourself. If you really want to deal with conflict, you need to examine yourself. Take an honest look at yourself. You can write these scriptures down. Psalm 139, 23 and 24. Luke 14, verse 17. And Acts 26:20. And sometimes when I've examined myself, the only action I needed to do was to repent. And I needed to change my heart and my behavior. When we repent, when we say sorry, when we repent to God or to somebody else, it gives us a clear conscience. We can move towards being reconciled. And it gives an example for other people to follow. I want you to think about this for a moment. Something I came across a few weeks ago. It's called Jesus Knew. He goes into the room with his disciples. He knows he's going to be betrayed. He knows he's going to be betrayed. He knows it is Judas who will turn against him. He knows that he's been sold for a handful of silver, stabbed in the back by one he has poured his life into. Yet in that room, hours before the death of Jesus, Judas ate too. Jesus fed Judas too. Jesus prayed for Judas too. Jesus washed Judas's feet too. I struggle to fathom that kind of love. A love that would feed the mouth of the one that he knew would deceive him. A love that would wash the feet of a traitor. A love that forgive even the vilest of betrayals. I honestly struggle to believe it. And then I suddenly realize that I'm Judas. And in that moment, I'm altogether thankful that Judas ate too. Third G. If someone has done something to hurt you, they probably don't know. You need to go and show your brother or sister their fault. The question we'd ask ourselves is, how can I help others to understand how they've contributed to this conflict? You can read all about this in Matthew 18. Point number 6 under go and show each other their fault. Know when and where you should go and confront someone. Timing is everything. You can do the right thing at the wrong time and it still be the wrong thing. You've got to know when and where to confront someone. You need to know when someone has something against you. It talks about that in Matthew 5, 21, 24. When someone has someone against you, you need to go to them if you know they have something against you. And you need to go when someone's sins are too serious to ignore. Matthew 18, 15. Number 7. Sometimes conflicts get too big where it's too hard to solve them on your own and you need to bring somebody else in to help. Number 7, know when to involve other people. Sometimes you just have to overlook minor offenses. Then you need to talk in private. Take 1 or 2 others along. Matthew 18 goes on. It says if it doesn't get solved then, maybe we need to tell it to the church or treat people as an unbeliever. But those are extreme cases. But you need to know when to involve other people. If you can't get it solved, I have spouses come to me all the time. Not because they're going to get a divorce, because they're like, okay, we need someone to help us figure this out. I just need a different set of eyes on this. Someone who's going to be honest with us. When do you look to other people? First, you need to talk in private. Then you need to talk with maybe another person. Then you need to bring somebody along. The 4th G is this: go and be reconciled. Go and make peace. Reconcile. Bring together. It's not an option. How can I demonstrate forgiveness and encourage a reasonable solution to this conflict? Go and make things right. If you're here today and you have somebody that you've been in conflict with, whether it's a family member that you haven't talked with for a long time, maybe you can send them something. Maybe you can give them a call. You're not going to solve it in one time, but just extend a branch and say, you know what, I'm thinking about you. Number 8, remember this. God forgave you. You were in conflict with him. He forgave you. Christians are the most forgiven people in the world. Shouldn't we be the most forgiving people in the world? Let that sink into your heart. Christians are the most forgiven people in the world. Shouldn't we be the most forgiving people in the world? Do you know how much he has forgiven me? For the times that I've turned my back, that I've literally cursed his name, that I've made a joke out of my relationship with him, and he still forgives me? What gall would I have to not forgive you? Forgiveness is not a feeling. What I want to be absolutely clear, there's people in this room, you've had absolutely horrible things happen to you. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not excusing their behavior. Forgiveness is not for them. It's for you. I've had someone tell me, Troy, I had somebody rape me. How could I ever forgive them? I can't excuse what they did. No. What they did was horrible and vile. It isn't for them, it's for you. It isn't a feeling. I was so mad at my son the other day. If you can go back to, ever watch Ally McBeal like 15 or 20 years ago, where she used to have these premonitions where she would grab people and like body slam them? I had one of those. I was so mad at him. He embarrassed me, and I pictured myself running over, walking briskly over to him, grabbing him, flipping him upside down, and smashing his head on the floor. I was so mad. Forgiveness is not a feeling. But I just walk away. And I don't know, about 3 hours later, Penny's like, you should go talk to him. I was like, that would not be a good idea. Forgiveness is not a feeling. It's not forgetting. It's not excusing the behavior. A decision, forgiveness is a decision to make 4 promises. And here they are. And I'm not saying this is easy, but here they are. Number 1, I will not think about this incident again. This is different than forgetting. I'm choosing that if it comes to my mind, to turn away. I mean, the next day, my son came to me and he's like, Dad, I'm so sorry for what I did. I don't know if his mother went and talked to him, probably. But you know, everything's okay. But I need to make the decision that I will not think about this incident again. Number 2, I will not bring up this incident and use it against you. So in 2 weeks, when I'm mad at him again, I've made a decision that I'm not going to say, yeah, you remember when you... That's a decision. Number 3, I will not talk to others about this incident. That once we've made peace, I'm not going to talk to other people. Number 4, I will not allow this incident to stand between us and this relationship. See, forgiveness means you have to say no to your sinful attitudes and your expectations. And here's the truth, and this is going to be hard. But here's 3 sinful attitudes that we all have at times. Number 1, we want the offender or the person that's hurt us to earn or deserve our forgiveness. I'll forgive you if you earn it. I'd like to go back to my point previous, that I'm really glad I didn't have to earn Jesus' forgiveness from me, or I'd never make it to heaven. Number 2, we have a desire to punish the offender. We expect them to earn or deserve our forgiveness. And number 2, we desire to punish the offender. And I've heard so many people, including myself, say, I want them to be punished for what they've done. Number 3, this is really hard, but we can't demand a guarantee that it will never happen again. Because most offense happens by accident. How can you guarantee that an accident will never happen again? I mean, if you show up at my house and I open the door and I slap you in the face and shut the door, and then the next day you come and I open the door and slap your face and shut you in the door, you need to guarantee that that's never going to happen again. But most offenses, they don't happen on purpose. And so you can't demand a guarantee that it'll never happen, an accident will never happen again. When you're dealing with conflict, it's really important, number 9, to develop a biblical approach to negotiate. It says this in Philippians 2, 3, and 4. Each of us should look not only for our own interest, but the interest of others. There's an old saying that says, hurt people, hurt people. You hear it? Hurt people, hurt people. And often people that are hurting cause hurt and they don't even mean to. Each of us should look not only at our own interests, don't be selfish, but think of other people. Number 10. When you're in conflict, you need to know how to deal with unreasonable people. Because sometimes people are just not reasonable. There's been times I have been unreasonable. Here are a few things that you can remember about that. Remember that we have divine weapons, that we're not just fighting against flesh and blood, that we have prayer and we have God to help us. And so there's times that I've dealt with people that were unreasonable, but we've had success because God was fighting for me and with me. If you're going to deal with someone who's unreasonable, you have to control your tongue. Because everything you say will be used against you in a court of law. Not an actual court. But you've got to control your tongue when you're in conflict. Just because you will say it doesn't mean you should say it. I will say anything. It doesn't mean I should. There's a saying that I say all the time, is you can say it like it is, or you can say it like an idiot. Saying it like it is and speaking the truth in love is one thing, but saying it like an idiot, just because you will say it doesn't mean you should say it. You need to seek godly advisors. Seek somebody who's going to give you godly advice. If you're in conflict and you ask someone, hey, what should I do about this conflict? And they say flatten their tires, they're not the best people to get advice from. You should look for someone else. Just key their car. No, you need some other advice. And when you're dealing with people who are unreasonable, keep doing the right thing. Recognize your limits. Sometimes you just need to know your limits. But the ultimate weapon is love. Make sure you protect yourself from your own bitterness. Because when someone offends you, even if it's intentional or not intentional, bitterness is a way to set into our heart even if they were wrong. Make sure that you know that repentance is the goal. This morning I would encourage you to don't just be merely listeners of the word. You need to be doers of the word. Here's a few things that we can do this week. Just in closing. Why don't you write down today just one or two peacemaking skills, not peacekeeping skills. Not about how can I smile and pretend this is okay. Not how can I shove this under the rug. Peacemaking skills. How can I practice one or two things, not 10, one or two things that I can be a better peacemaker. 2. Max 2. 1 maybe even better. Focus on improving 1 or 2 peacemaking skills. That's it. Number 2. If you have someone in your life that you have conflict with, why don't you just try to make 1 step towards reconciliation? Just 1. Call, a letter, a text, a visit. If you are here this morning and you are starting to think, oh yeah, I have conflict with this person and this person, and maybe your list is 3 or 4 people, my advice would be that maybe we need to look internally. Because if you're having conflict with a bunch of people, number 3, why don't you memorize some key Bible verses about forgiveness? Memorize them. Write them down. Hide them in your heart. It says this in Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers. The peacemakers. For they will be called the sons of God. Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers. If that is true, then the opposite is true. That if you are someone who isn't keeping the peace, the blessings of God will not befall you. Remember the 10 things. Understand conflict, what causes it and what's my response to it. Number 2, conflict provides opportunity. to not only build a deeper relationship, but to bring glory to God. Peacemaking, number 3, is not optional. It's not an option. We are the most forgiven people in the world. The Bible actually tells us that if we don't forgive, we won't be forgiven. Number 4, is this really worth fighting over? Number 5, examine yourself. Number 6, know when and how you should go and confront someone. Number 7, know when you should involve somebody else. Number 8, forgive as God forgave you. Number 9, develop a biblical approach to negotiating where you put the other person's needs along with yours. Sometimes you need to know when someone's just being unreasonable. A few years ago, I had someone come to me, a few years ago, it was before I was here, and they came to me with a whole list of things that they were upset at me about. Some I knew about, some I didn't. And I remember I asked, I said, so we've had this conflict, and how have you contributed to this conflict? And they said, not at all. Then I knew. Then I knew that they were being unreasonable. Because even in my and my wife's worst disagreements where I'm 100% right, I'm never 100% right. Because even if the initial act of her and I was 100% right, it doesn't take long for my attitude to take me down a path of not being right. And I become unreasonable. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. We need to know this morning that we can't love God and treat people poorly. They don't go together. Even if they have different political views, different sexual orientation views, even if they have different views on abortion, even no matter what their view is, we are the most forgiven people in the world. Some of my closest friends at Grace Church are the people I've had the deepest conflict with. If you want to know what it looks like, you can go to our website, bucktooshchurch.com. You can go back on Faces of Grace videos, and me and Pat did an interview about a conflict that me and Pat had. Today. You go watch it. And together we stood, and we brought glory to the one. I was wrong. He was wrong. Don't let conflict and bitterness derail your life. God, I thank you for this day. God, I pray that the notes that we've sketched, or if we go back and read and watch this again, that you would just help guide our hearts. That you would bring clarity to our mind. That you would help us to not be unreasonable. That we'd remember how much you've forgiven and how much you love us. And we give you this day. May this be the day that we take our first step towards reconciliation. In your name. Amen. My prayer is that God would bless you, that he would keep you, that he would make his face shine upon you, that he would raise his countenance to you, that he would give you peace. God bless you. Why don't we stand? He's going to sing Praise the Hallelujah.